thank Lisa
Nice.
at the very end.
Welcome back to Senate Education.
Reference
We,
them. I didn't know what you were
on
talking about.
Wednesday, January 31st. Senator Clarkson, please join us. We look forward to hearing your thoughts on the genesis of S 282.
Oh, I was hoping you'd kind of like give me the floor about my thoughts, period.
Oh.
I don't talk
Oh,
about
that
would be. It is low.
You know,
We like to keep our witnesses
it's
a
an
little
intimidation
lower
thing.
than everyone
What's
else.
Senator Jewick? I
I
thought.
mean, you like to cut them down to size,
Right.
so.
Right.
So it is Allison Clarkson, Senator, Windsor County District. It is a joy to be back in Senate education. Room at the end of the hall, where so many things can happen. It is a pleasure to be back with you. It is exactly a week. Beth and I were just saying from when this almost exact same bill was taken up in House Education, and I'm unclear which committee may be taking it up, whether House or Senate's going to lead on this. But I don't think that decision's been made, so I feel comfortable in bringing it to you today.
Great.
I understand the chair has kindly offered to have the students who are actually behind this bill come and speak to you with their passion and interest in this subject. And it's an issue that's near and dear to this committee's heart.
Just so you know, they're not speaking today.
I know.
Yeah, great.
I
Because at one point,
think I said
yeah.
invited them to come, and
Yeah.
they aren't. There's no one under 20 in this room.
Well, we have something in this room called Zoom, and that's where they would be, but they are,
Hi, if you're watching. Okay, so I
Okay.
do that because one of the young people.
Yeah.
One of the young people who has proposed this is in fact our Senate page from Vermont to the United States Congress, and is Hudson Rainey is down in Washington DC right now, representing Vermont. In a place that means a lot of Vermont values now. So this bill began with the Vermont Student Anti-Racism Network meeting, and it's a robust group of young people around the state that have met, and they have brought to us this bill, and they're trying to improve their school environment. They're trying to improve what is not working for them and what so they spend, as young people, they spend most of their week in school, and their environment is not a happy place for many of them. The purpose of this proposed work is designed to shine a light on some of the ugly behavior that none of us may see, but that is prevalent, and to shine a light on behaviors which are hurting them. Our students know best how the bullying and intimidation and racism are affecting them day to day. And so this bill enables a year's pilot to examine the school policies and to make recommendations that after this year, I think it's the end of 25, they would be making recommendations to their school districts and in fact to us about how to improve our school environments and make them safer, happier places for many of our students.
I mean, we saw the headlines this summer. It was one after another, I felt, around this issue. Yeah, so it is hard out there.
And we've begun work on that.
Yeah.
We have,
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's a work that's ever finished, but this bill creates equity teams of, I think it's 5 people. That would, it's teachers and students working together to examine the school environment in each one of those districts. There would be 5 pilots around the state. They've created a commission. I'm not fully clear on why you need a commission, but they will explain why. It creates a commission that would identify which schools would be, or districts would be the pilots. And so 5 pilots. Let's see, the equity teams will focus on anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion by reviewing equity-related policies and curriculum, and each one will receive a stipend. Each of these pilot equity teams would get a stipend of $10,000 each. The report is due back September of 25. And the commission, which oversees the teams, would, I guess, coordinate the teams, coordinate their work, and would do the work of identifying which school districts got the teams. That is it. The stipend is to help. It's a little. The stipend supports their work, and from what I can gather, it would reimburse the teams for transportation, for food, for, you know, whatever costs, whatever expertise or resources they needed. You can explore all that and find out why they've said that. And so it's the appropriation is $50,000 appropriated to the Office of Racial Equity, which would oversee, I understand, this work. And the teams would be 3 students and 2 teachers, as I said. And I am just a vehicle for helping put this in play. And Hudson, I represent Hudson, who's one of their very articulate members, as is, I believe, Abby is coming. Anyway, you'll have you have a bunch of students who are passionate about this and who are really hoping to have a pilot statewide that can examine this in 5 different school districts and come back with some recommendations for us.
So they're the ones that thought the 10,000, they thought the pilot, this is their.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
what they have explored and what we have enabled for them.
Uh-huh.
This is their recommendation. And this is the recommendation of the Vermont Student Anti-Racism Network, which is, you know, they'll tell you, I don't know how big that network is.
Yeah.
I know it's good size. Some
Questions
of you may know more than I.
for Senator Clarkson? Senator Hewitt, please.
Thank you very much for bringing this to us. This is so exciting. I have been known to say that we need to, you know, fix bullying and racism and other issues in schools, not by litigation necessarily, but by on the ground work, which I really appreciate this. So I hope we can make it go. I'd love to see, I don't know, we can work with it, but maybe more conversation around bullying here. Just to throw this out there, we had something in the last school I worked at where when there was a disciplinary action, it went to this sort of equity team to find out, you know, what the consequences were on the person who perpetrated the action. And it was hard because of FERPA and privacy rules, but students really wanted to know what happened and what the consequences were, and how it impacted those that had been harmed. So it was almost like a restorative justice kind of thing. So I'm also just wondering how restorative justice is gonna play into this.
It's a good question. I've asked the kids. I think it's a work in progress.
Yeah,
And I think they're wanting to explore all those things. And I think a lot of kids suck up and absorb some of the ugliness that they're dealt, and they need a mechanism for addressing it I would ask them that. I love the idea of teachers and students working together on solving problems in their school districts. So I think you're absolutely right. It's on the ground. This is where the rubber meets the road with these kids in their environment, in their school districts, with their teachers, trying to solve this problem one school at a time. Yeah. So anyway, I'm so grateful that you're willing to listen to them, and you may not go further with it, but I'm hoping you'll at least incorporate it in something that you're working on, because I think it's important work.
Mhm.
And the 10th and the 50,000 likely general fund, ed fund, TBD. Okay,
I think that's your job.
it's technically not.
I know, but I think that's this committee's
Yes.
to figure out it, and I don't know the answer to that. I don't think we specified.
We did.
We did. It's ed fund. It's general fund. It's the other thing. It's not the transportation fund.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay,
Thank you. Well, at least I remember it's $50,000. I got the 10 that. Oh, yeah. Thank you
Ms.
very
St.
much.
James.
Thank you.
Good. Oh,
My goodness, I don't even, thank you, first of all. I don't even need to say anything, you walked through the middle.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Oh, now I've gotta go back to the open meeting law. Goodbye.
Good luck.
And Terry, already once today, there's been executive session in this building.
No.
I am, if anybody's interested, I am open to a motion to order this to live. Definitely, but it's totally up to you. I'm seeing. Please.
Beth St. James Office of Legislative Counsel, we are gonna walk through S 282, which the sponsor pretty much did already. There's a couple things we can point out. So the first thing I will say is this is a piece of session law, so this is a pilot project, so it's not going into curriculum books, but it still has the full force and effect of law. So this bill creates the Education Equity Team Pilot Project to support work in schools by providing stipends to up to 5 supervisory unions or school districts to fund the work of equity teams. It creates the Equity Commission to oversee the pilot project that is composed of 1 student equity leader appointed by the governor, 1 representative from the Social Equity Caucus appointed by the chair of the caucus, the chair of the State Board of Education or designee, the director of the Office of Racial Equity or designee, and 1 member of the House Committee of Education appointed by the Speaker of the House. The commission's has kind of 2 jobs here. 1 is to identify up to 5 supervisory union or school districts to participate in the pilot project and to manage the stipends. But they also are to provide support to the equity teams created. The Office of Racial Equity is the state entity designated to provide support to the commission. And then the commission is required to report back next September to you all on the work of the equity teams, including any recommendations for expansion of the pilot project. And then there's language about how many meetings the commission needs to have, et cetera. On page 3, line 10, subsection C, is the language about the equity teams themselves. So the commission is choosing which supervisory unions or school districts are going to participate. And then up to 5. And then let's see. Then the supervisory union and the school districts themselves are creating the equity teams on the ground. So the commission is picking the districts, and then the districts are picking people. The equity teams are going to focus on anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion by reviewing equity-related policies and curriculum. The teams have to include an equity coordinator or other school administrator, 3 students, and 2 teachers, and then again, the superintendent is appointed for the team members, so not district supervisory union level. As the sponsor mentioned, each team is entitled to a $10,000 stipend to support its work. The bill as drafted contemplates that stipend would be used for transportation reimbursement, food and supplies for meetings, and other resources to support the staff or to support the work of the team. And it does require students to be reimbursed at the same rate as staff. And then the appropriation on page 4 is from the general fund, $50,000 to the Office of Racial Equity for those stipends after take effect on July 1, 2024.
Questions from St. James? Yeah, please, Mr. Rashid.
Just a question about the timing next September 2025. So does the report come out before the work of these groups or after the work of these groups? And if it's after, then when are they gonna be doing their things?
I mean, this contemplates that they're working this summer through the fall into the next school year. So the 2024-2025 school year.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Rashid.
Thank you. So the idea of this is something I support a lot, but I'm wondering if we heard from Amanda just the other day, we got the report from the advisory working group. And I was trying to read through it quickly, but is this at all duplicative of this report that we received and the guidance, the recommendations that are in here?
Yeah, that's a good question. I also wonder if it's at all duplicative of the hazing, harassment, and bullying legislation. I don't know. But
I mean, it's, I was gonna say, it's something I've definitely liked to work on, but if we have if we have the recommendations that help to address equity and bullying and harassment issues and racism in schools, we gave them a pretty big task and they put together a lot of information, so I think that it'd be good to maybe do like a side-by-side comparison of this versus.
Yes.
Is this maybe just, this is the part of it?
You think that this
Yeah.
one's a part of it? Yeah,
I mean, it could be.
yeah, that's what I'm wondering too, and if it is, I'm all for it, but I'm just trying to be mindful in general of our bills and how sometimes we duplicate things and it's fun.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea also. I worry, don't worry, I just worry, well, I do worry. The pilot we did for wraparound schools, good information. Pilots, I just want to make sure that whatever happens, it actually goes out. I see Mr. Robinson over there. I don't know if other schools are picking that up. I look back and I don't know if I'm thinking, gosh, that was a good idea or that was a bad idea yet. Because we put a lot of money into it. This is not a lot of money. Some schools benefited from wraparound services. They got to try it out. But we'll find out quickly if they're cutting all those services after 2 years. And what did we learn? What was the takeaway? This seems more but doable price wise. And I guess I'd also be curious to know, and we can dig into this, what some of the schools are doing. There's definitely a problem out there. There's no question about it. Yeah,
I
please.
think it might be good to have Addie Lenzner testify. She's in this report, and from what we heard from Senator Clarkson, it also sounds like she was involved in this with the Vermont Students Against Racism. So
Yeah,
Also
most
making-
constituent of mine, she's slated to come next week.
oh
Yeah, if the committee's interested in digging into this a little bit more. The only other thing that I would say, and I'll talk to Peter Conlon about it, is I'm not sure if we're completely balanced in terms of who's starting with bills yet. Most of them are starting to hear the House is doing school construction, but I don't see their lip quite as heavy as ours, so it might be something that we ask the House to start with. What's that?
we're gonna make a joke. School construction is not a heavy lift.
No pun intended. But what's gonna come out of that, I frankly don't know if it's going to be nearly what we're gonna be doing for the business, CTE and some of the other issues, so. Questions, comments?
Comment,
Comment.
it's important.
It's very important. I think we all
Well,
agree, yeah.
in the context of education, declining academic standing, and programs and things we keep adding to our diminished teacher population. In funding, I think that we need to go back to the basics and start focusing on education. And, if you got a sports team and they're failing, you go back to the fundamentals, the basic fundamentals of, we need to do the same thing with reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's my own personal opinion. I think our focus is too gloomy. So, I just have to say,
Yeah, no, and I think this is part of, I mean, certainly being in a school. We don't want any child in Vermont to feel unsafe,
right,
be
absolutely.
bullied, harassed, zero tolerance. Is this the best way to do it? I don't know. It could be one way to try out. We may also ask people to try this in 5 schools without the $10,000. And come back and report.
I noticed they
To
took
us.
it out of the general fund, they didn't take it out of the education fund. Which would, you know, I think the 18.5% increase in education fund that they're talking about is. Would have got some pushback from ourselves.
Yeah, I think I'm reading, everybody wants to do something. The question is what might be the most effective way to do it.
And if it's a repeat of the Act One working group,
We can
For
find
sure.
out pretty easily.
I think we'd rather spend $50,000 on adult education. So people can get a trade,
I mean, well, I think we all agree, we just want we want kids. We saw a lot of headlines this summer where kids aren't feeling safe and good in schools. This is also a product of that feeling. How can we improve it? We've taken some steps, hazing, harassment, bullying, mascot, bill, Act One. The work is going to continue. Is this the right approach? We'll find out. Maybe it's a different way to invest. I don't know. Yeah,
And just a quick comment.
Yeah.
The, like you were mentioning, going back to just focusing on the education itself, I mean, my response would be, you know, if kids are dealing regularly with hazing, harassment, bullying, and racism, that's going to contribute to declining test scores. I had to deal with it myself in middle school, and it's, you know, the last thing I cared about was math. So
yeah, it interrupts it,
Yeah.
for sure. That's a really good point for sharing. Yes, sir, go.
I just wanted to echo what my colleague said. I think it's, as if from a teacher's perspective, it's really hard to teach when students are suffering. Whether it's from hunger or abuse or bullying. It's, we know how the brain works, and if the information doesn't get in, there's that block. And I mean, we heard this morning in health and welfare that it seems as though somewhere in our society, things are happening that need to happen. So if kids aren't learning to be kind at home, you know, the school has to step in and do the work of teaching kids to be kind and open, and you know, the state is having to sort of help where some of the stuff isn't happening at home or wherever else is supposed to help happen. So and as with all due respect to my adult ed folks who are wonderful, if we get kids to learn appropriately when they're young, we won't need adult education. They're gonna get what they need early on. So I think investing early is really important as well.
And our dropout rate, as you know, in Vermont is high. I mean, what we see this year, something like 25%, 30% in some districts, higher.
No, I just wanted to comment. I understand the need for the research. I understand the need for the students and the faculty to get involved in the issue. But I don't think it's necessary to put a $50,000 against it. I think this is a great student council project. It's not something that needs to be interested in.
Yeah, we'll dig into it a little bit. We'll see if the House wants to start this process, see what they think, but, okay, well, thanks, David. Important topic. Appreciate Senator Clark's bringing it. Mr. Bennett. S204. Activating reading assessment and intervention. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So, Dick Morgan, you've got testimony,
It's being printed out right now.
got it. So S204.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Once again, Jeff Kennedy, Executive Director, Vermont NEA. Thank you for inviting me to speak with you at S204, which I refer to as a literacy bill. We share your intention to ensure that every Vermont student knows how to read and improves their reading competencies. We have significant concerns with the bill, but if you think it necessary, believe the bill needs to be amended to make sure it doesn't conflict with state policies and federal laws, to ensure it doesn't create redundancies in school delivery systems, and to assure that it doesn't impinge upon teachers' ability to teach all students how to read. You may see some similarities and consistency with the AOB's Jessica Carlos testimony, that she gave you a few weeks ago.
Consistencies or inconsistencies?
Consistency,
Consistencies.
yes, I'll get to that.
Okay.
Which, is an appreciation for her work, say that one. Education research is, an ongoing process, and the profession continues to be informed by teachers in the field, neuroscientists in laboratories as to what is the most effective teaching for all readers. It is ever evolving, as it should be. This focus on reading is a robust debate profession, and educators already continuously improve their practices based on solid research. But we don't want to become beholden to one particular instructional practice because it happens to be really popular or touted by the press. For example, in 2007, the United Kingdom went down the reading road and contemplated by some here now. But a recent academic examination of the results cannot make a compelling case for adopting a phonics-only approach to teaching reading. And I give you a citation of that University of Bristol report in there, a link to it. Indeed, the paper calls for scrapping the phonics approach adopted in 2007 for a more comprehensive alternative approach to teaching reading. While Vermont educators are informed by research into teaching phonics, they're most effective when they take a comprehensive and flexible approach to literacy instruction. Jessica Carlos's January 19 written testimony is compelling and worthy of a reread. Among other recommendations, she also stressed the importance of reviewing the good work of the Act 28 Advisory Council for Literacy, their accomplishments and its recommendations. So link to that report there. Just in case.
Morgan, do they have that, is that testimony down there?
Should be ready.
Okay.
The council is comprised of, among others, teachers who work in classrooms every day with students who present with a myriad of challenges and successes when it comes to reading. Teachers are the experts, and while they certainly can advance their craft, they teach our students with much success as compared to other states who adopted a one-size-fits-all approach. For example, you heard about Mississippi's success on the NAEP scores of its fourth graders. However, the scores there are suspect for two reasons. First, Mississippi retains a great number of third grade students, which provides significant resources to those early readers. That's a good thing. But it may have social, emotional scars for students who are failed third grade. Second, the NAEP scores touted as demonstrating Mississippi's reading success in fourth grade dropped significantly by eighth grade. In other words, Mississippi's success was fleeting. Looking at the states that scored well throughout, Massachusetts and New Jersey, it is worth noting that they don't mandate a one-size-only approach to reading. What teachers say they need most to teach all readers is flexibility. I heard that repeatedly, and it makes sense. Each student brings different strengths to the classroom. Each student is different, and different learners require different pathways to reading proficiency. Teachers need flexibility and the resources to meet every child's unique needs, and requiring a single approach for all students will necessarily fail some students. The science of teaching students to read is based on a large body of research that contains 5 interrelated components. All students need explicit instruction in the 5 essential components of reading: phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and reading comprehension. While the bill mentions these 5 components, S204 places too much emphasis on one aspect of the research in phonics, while minimizing the importance of others. However, the interconnectedness and interdependence of all the essential components cannot be overstated. That singular focus may harm certain students who may excel with different approaches to teaching them to read. If you move forward with the bill, Vermont AA recommends you adopt the amendments to the bill that Jessica Carlos outlined in her testimony. Additionally, Vermont AA believes the bill should include specific mention and ongoing appropriation for the Act 28 Literacy Project Manager at the House of the AOE.
Sorry, would you repeat that part?
Sure.
Supporting the continuation of that person, is that what you're saying?
Correct. But I said, well, it's better stated in there, I think. But we think the position is a good one. Previously, I have sat in this chair and criticized the agency for shortcomings that I saw. But I want to be clear, given resources, as was the case with the Act 28 literacy position, the agency has served a vital role for literacy specialists, special educators, and regular education classroom teachers throughout Vermont. Please maintain your support for that position. Another general recommendation would be to increase resources for the AOE and school districts with which to collect literacy data. Locally obtained data guides curriculum development and instruction, thus making data an evidentiary resource for schools. The AOE and local education leaders need to be given resources to figure out a way to make local assessments valid and reliable for the state to use. At section 1D, which is proposed, Title 16, 2907D, the bill proposed to add a new statewide end-of-year assessment through statewide end-of-year assessments shall be given to intensive general education reading intervention immediately following the identification of the reading deficiency. Despite what the testing companies claim, statewide standardized tests are designed to assess a district's academic program and not to reach conclusions about individual students. Using a standardized statewide assessment to identify a reading deficiency in individual students lacks the efficacy of an assessment conducted by a trained classroom teacher. And in section 1E, the bill proposes to ban a specific instructional strategy and remove from the professional teacher's reading arsenal a tool. That is exactly the type of directive teachers are saying they do not need or want. The flexibility to meet every student's needs is critical to teachers being able to succeed with students. Moreover, our position as to this specific issue is consistent with Vermont NEA's long-held position that curriculum matters should not be subject to legislative action. It's also, I'll remind you, it's consistent with what VSBA said. I think Kara Zimmerman talked about that too. So that's my written testimony. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. I'm by no means, and I'll say this outright, I am not a reading expert.
Yeah, no, that's great. And when did you email us your testimony?
I think around 3:15.
Okay.
Making some last
Got it.
minute
Yeah, no, I apologize.
No.
Ready. Yeah.
Um,
Questions, comments, or sure.
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 Yeah, please.
Thank you very much
Yeah.
for that. A few questions / comments. So you seem to be in your testimony targeting reading instruction comprehensively, writ large in schools.
I'm
And
not sure, but
this bill
yes.
isn't doing that. This bill is a targeted approach for students who are showing deficiencies early in school. So it's not retooling the way we teach reading necessarily across the board.
Okay, I don't, if you say so, that I understand what you're saying, but I did speak with several teachers about this. And they were saying whether a kid is challenged or not, I need to bring up every arsenal in my toolbox to the plate. And if you tie one of my hands behind my back, whether it's a kid who's challenged or not challenged, I'm then challenged in being effective with that student. So whether the child is suffering a deficiency or not, we want to bring everything we can to that student. And I think that's what the teachers are saying to me.
Okay, it seemed like you were talking about, it sounded as though you were suggesting that this bill is targeting the way we teach reading across the board, where to me, that's not what this is. This is just a targeted approach for kids who are maybe not excelling in second grade or first grade and need certain targeted approaches.
I think that's right, the bill, but it is very prescriptive.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
About that.
Yes,
And that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Folks are not, don't think it's the best strategy for them to, try to get all the students, because the reading challenges may be varied.
right. And they clearly are, judging by the outcomes that we're seeing. And my other, it's just a question, is I really respect the opinions of all the various organizations that weigh in on the fact that the legislature shouldn't get involved in curriculum and so on and so forth, and you have long-standing thoughts and stances on these things. At the same time, at what point do you draw a line in the sand and say, this is a crisis, we need to do something different? I understand you want to hold to what works for your groups. I get that. But I just wanna, I guess I wanna tap into is there room for creativity? Is there room for change? Is there room for, some, behavior that might, require some evolution?
Right, and I talked about that, I mean,
Okay, I don't, sorry.
No, 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 and earlier, that's what I talked about, it is an ever evolving process, and yes, teachers do evolve, as do we all. And I think that's what they're saying is, we are making great strides. Act 28 was a good thing. That literacy position at the AOE was very helpful. That's really just getting going. I think somebody said the modules that the AOE has now have been out for 4 months. So I think the change you see is out there and it's coming, but it's not yet fully grounded and baked, but it's in progress.
Thank you. My only other question is, you're speaking for the they collective. How many folks did you speak to when you're talking for teachers? How many? Because I've talked to teachers who have actually a very different view, and there were folks who read the 7 Days article. There were teachers in there who were saying, I want to learn how to teach reading properly. I want to do the right thing. So I'm wondering how many, can you give us a sense of how many people this was?
I talked in the fall with people about this. I don't have a sense exactly. I didn't keep track. But it's, yes, and I read the 7 Days article. I read other articles. Spent much of the weekend reviewing research on this. And so while an article is as deep as it goes, the research that I read was telling me we ought not to be going with one singular approach, and we ought to be not emphasizing one approach to solving the reading challenges that students come with. In fact, the research that I read said you want to bring everything. And whether a kid is challenged in one particular way or others, it's better to have everything you possibly can have at the ready to use with that student. So that is what I did hear from teachers. I certainly the 3 on the council were helpful, as were other people.
On the Literacy Council?
The Literacy Council, sorry. And so, what I'm hearing is we're getting there. We see a problem. We're trying to address it. The tools of, again, I've sat in this chair and been critical of the agency for what I saw as its shortcomings. And on this one, I think they're starting to really hit their sweet spot. It's because of the resources we're given to them to hire somebody who really has been helping the field. That's good. They used to do that a lot more, and that's not what we hear out of the agency of late. So that's a pleasant change. Good.
Yes. Sure is. Can I ask one more?
Yeah, please, of course.
So just hypothetically, if we were to do nothing, how long would you give the current system to start kicking in? When would we start seeing results from what we're doing now? i.e. the modules, for example.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure anybody would be able to know. It's one of these things where the talk about research is ongoing, and we should be doing it. That's why I talk about data collection. We should be doing data collection so that we have better understanding of where we are, where the kids are. I think that's a better approach, because whether you did the bill or focus on one aspect or not, and not others, we won't know until some point down in the future. And I think that's what the United Kingdom did, was studied it. This professor did and said, hey, the stuff we tried in 2007 really hasn't shown any improvement. It's not, so we sunk a lot of effort into this and it didn't pay off. Now, the prior one didn't either. And that's why they changed in 2007. But it's still ever evolving. And I think we don't want to pigeonhole ourselves into one particular approach.
Correct, and we certainly don't want to use strategies that are harmful, which we know there are certain reading strategies that are actually harmful to kids, and I think they need to be removed from the repertoire. And
Right.
I will.
And I would say, again, Mississippi, had a very high retention rate in 3rd grade. And while that may up their scores, it may have caused other harm to those students in other ways down the road.
I apologize. What do you mean by that sentence? The way it's, yeah, so that's, go ahead.
Right, I think, there is,
Students are not moving on from 3rd grade.
right, if you're,
Okay.
if you're held back in 3rd grade,
Yeah.
failed, or whatever
Yeah,
term you want to
yeah.
use, and your classmates are going up fourth, you probably still have recess together, you probably still have lunch together and other
Yes.
things of that sort. And Jeff is now suddenly a 3rd grader still.
Right.
And the scars of that being held back issue are real.
Yeah,
We're talking about,
No
a few
question.
minutes ago, talking about hazing, harassing,
No
bullying.
question. No,
These are social stigmas that
no question.
that don't typically help kids, I'll say it that way. So should we work with them to get them to a better place of reading? Absolutely. But Mississippi is akin to the Houston Miracle that we heard about many years ago, and their testing where they just held back kids, that was the solution. That's all they did. They didn't. But Mississippi, to their credit, did provide resources, but only at those early grades. And by 8th grade, whatever gains they had were lost. And Vermont is about top 3 or 4, I think, in reading by 8th grade. So there are concerns at the early grade, no question about it. But by the 8th grade, we're doing really well. If you just want to take one score on the NAEP, which just takes a sample of kids, it's not comprehensive, but it is a comprehensive exam. And I don't have it, but I know of the NAEP is very, it's more than just reading. It's a comprehensive reading comprehension exam. Much different than sort of, can I read these 10 words? That's not at all what the NAEP is about.
I do appreciate what you said though about the 7 days, one piece. I want us to be thoughtful. I personally took issue with some of the things in it that were left out. Important piece for sure, but I don't want us always to respond to news articles per se. I mean, it's good to get the conversation going, but I appreciate it. Center weeks.
Yeah, I appreciate your testimony. One of the comments that you made really resonated, and that's that in the evaluation of readers, we should be concerned about the performance of the individual reader versus the performance of the district. I get that. So just curious if you can characterize the current reading performance testing, whether we're really focusing on the student or we're focusing on the district, because I really don't know. I'm curious of your view.
I don't know. I don't know if I know the answer, but that answer may vary depending on the school district, right? And so some schools may be focused on the exam.
Okay, but there's not a standardized test requirement for districts across the state. That's what I'm asking. Are we focusing on the student? Are we focusing on the district? I just don't know. I'm not trying to set you up.
Yeah, no. I'm trying to think of No Child Left Behind, Every Student Succeeds Act. There are other acts that require certain measures to be taken, and for the life of me, I apologize, I'm drawing a blank on this one. So I can get back to you on that.
Thank you.
I just want to stand up for myself. My comments about 7 days were simply with regard to the teachers' comments, the teachers who spoke in the article about the harm that they saw within the current system. So I was just talking about a testimony of the teachers, not necessarily referring to the veracity of the reporting or the data in the article, just FYI. And the only other thing I wanted to say was that I do think it's important if you're going to start talking about harm done by holding kids back, that the harm done that illiteracy does to kids, that is quantified. And we have a ton of data on that. I don't know if there's a lot of data on the harm or the stigma around being held back, but if there is, I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
Because it'd be interesting to compare the two.
Fair enough. And I'm not disputing at all that kids who can't read do suffer harm. That's without argument. And I start there. We share your goal of make sure all kids read. That is the priority. And so.
Please, Senator.
I don't know the answer, so I'll ask the question. Do we have statistics on how many students are actually kept back a grade for 2022?
I don't know if the agency collects that. I don't know if schools collect it. I know that what I hear is we don't like to hold kids back in Vermont. It's not true in other states. Obviously, Mississippi has a high rate. They also have corporal punishment in Mississippi. I don't think we're looking to do that either. So I think the consensus in this state is, for very serious reasons, you might want to hold a child back. I think it's probably a last resort. And I think to Senator Tulick's question or comment about the harm holding back a student is versus reading, we want to make sure that if you're going to advance a child, even though they have challenges, that they get the attention they need and the help they need to become a better reader. So whether it's in third or fourth grade, that's what we want there.
Yes.
I just do think it's important to, I know we've talked about this before in here, but that shift that happens after third grade, where you're going from learning to read to using reading to learn. I just think it's important to, that's why that line is so important.
Right. And I, some of the research, and I didn't go down this rabbit hole because there's a lot of research out there on all this, but one of the pieces I saw was kindergarten teachers. And the quality of a kindergarten teacher is predictive of success in third grade. So,
Yeah.
you know, you can really drill down the data and get lost. There's one in the University of Bristol report, he talked about 11,000 news articles on reading in some kind of period. So there's an enormous amount of energy and interest in making sure that students read, and nobody doubts that.
Don't go far, Mr. Fisher. You're up next. Just back in. Thank you. 5 minutes? Maybe less.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll look at the Bristol report because I'm anxious to do that, but it would be interesting to see what the teacher prep situation was in that case, like what kind of preparation the teachers had. Because it sounds like it wasn't very successful.
In Bristol.
Yeah,
Well, there was a University of Bristol professor who looked at the entire, they have a much different education system.
right.
Yeah. My brother-in-law taught there for a bunch of years in the public school. And they do very much focus on the test taking and focus on that. And so it's a different approach altogether. And your point about people prep is deeply important. But what we might teach them today might be different from yours. And that probably is appropriate.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to switch literacy conversations with Mr. Fisher, but can we just take 2 minutes, quick 2 minutes? I need to stop down the hall and from home.